Before sunrise, you wake in a damp medieval town knowing your entire career depends on standing barefoot in fermented human urine. The streets are quiet, but the smell already lingers, because every household spent the night preparing your morning like a personal insult. Your job is called fulling cloth, which sounds respectable until someone remembers the main ingredient is yesterday's urine collected in barrels. Outside every house sits a sloshing container, carefully filled by people who will never once imagine the poor bastard collecting it. You drag the barrels away like a delivery worker, except your cargo is warm, sour, and chemically committed to ruining dignity. By the time you reach the mill, the liquid has aged into something stronger than waste, something that feels personally vindictive. The smell does not greet you politely. It attacks your lungs, settles in your nose, and redecorates your thoughts without permission. Inside, long wooden vats wait patiently, already filled with cloth, soaking in the sort of mixture nobody describes during job recruitment. There are no clever tools here, no protective gear, just your body, your feet, and management's absolute confidence in human suffering. You remove your shoes slowly, because apparently bare skin is cheaper than equipment, and your employer finds that financially inspiring. The first touch is warm, thick, and textured in a way that makes your soul briefly attempt to leave your body. One step confirms everything. This is not laundry. This is industrial humiliation disguised as honest work and blessed by economics. Steam rises from the vats and carries the smell straight upward, like the air itself wants full credit for your misery. Around you, other workers stomp rhythmically, looking less like laborers and more like members of history's most disgusting dance troupe. Nobody talks much, because speaking requires breathing, and breathing in here already feels like a strategic error with lifelong consequences. And somehow, despite all this, the city treats your job as perfectly normal, which says terrible things about the city. You start stomping because stopping is impossible, and quitting sounds wonderful right up until hunger politely reminds you otherwise. If this job already sounds horrifying, subscribe now, because medieval history always finds fresh ways to make survival feel deeply embarrassing. Each step makes a wet squelch that echoes through the mill like your dignity being kneaded into the cloth forever. The fabric fights back stubbornly, heavy with liquid, forcing you to throw your full weight into every miserable downward stomp. Your legs burn almost immediately, but the pile beside you remains enormous, patient, and somehow smug about your coming defeat. Supervisors watch output, not pain, because cloth must become soft while workers remain entirely replaceable and conveniently cheaper than mercy. The experienced workers move faster, which means they either mastered technique or simply lost the ability to hope years earlier. You try copying their rhythm, miss the beat, slip slightly, and discover the vat is eager to swallow mistakes whole. The splash hits your face, and suddenly you understand there are deeper levels of disgust than your imagination ever budgeted for. Breathing becomes optional, because every inhale feels like accepting a curse you definitely did not agree to legally. Then someone pours in more liquid, refreshing the mixture like the mill runs on efficiency, cruelty, and astonishingly low standards. You lift the cloth, turn it, stomp again, and repeat, because repetition is the only skill this job truly respects. After enough cycles, your feet start going numb, which sounds merciful until you realize numbness is just damage wearing makeup. The pile never seems smaller. It only waits nearby like physical proof that time itself has stopped being helpful. Hours blur together until the awful realization lands. This is not temporary suffering. This is simply your official livelihood. By noon, your body is still working, but your spirit has already filed an internal complaint and received no response. When you leave the mill, the job comes with you, clinging to your skin like a social curse you cannot wash. People do not need introductions, because your smell announces both your profession and your economic failure from halfway down the street. They step aside instinctively, creating distance like you are carrying plague, which honestly feels close enough for public relations. You pass market stalls and watch merchants protect their goods from you as if humiliation might transfer by proximity alone. Children point openly, not with curiosity, but with the delight of seeing someone else occupy the bottom rung first. Be honest, would you take this job for enough money? Or would pride finally win one argument in your life? Shopkeepers slam shutters when you approach, because apparently clean cloth is welcome, but the person cleaning it remains offensive. You try walking faster, but rejection keeps pace easily, proving this problem is not speed, it is identity. Even dogs follow you with puzzled interest, like they cannot decide whether you smell like danger, dinner, or career failure. That is when you understand the job never ends. It just changes scenery and keeps humiliating you outdoors. Your reflection in a puddle looks warped and exhausted, less like a person and more like a warning message. You stop making eye contact because strangers somehow manage to pity you and judge you at exactly the same time. There is no pride attached to this labor, only survival wrapped in routine shame and tied with economic necessity. Tomorrow will repeat today almost perfectly, because poverty is excellent at removing choice while pretending it left options. By evening, even silence feels hostile, because nobody insults you directly anymore, and somehow that feels worse. You walk home alone realizing society needs your work badly, but would still prefer you remain invisible forever. Back inside the mill, your feet are no longer merely sore. They are damaged in ways your future self will resent. The liquid eats at your skin slowly, turning redness into raw pain, then raw pain into something almost medically impressive. Every step lands sharper now, as if your own body finally understands this arrangement was insulting from the beginning. The floorboards stay slick with runoff, so falling no longer feels hypothetical. It feels like scheduling with consequences. Fumes rise constantly from the vats, making your head light, your stomach unstable, and your thoughts wonderfully unfit for survival. You breathe shallower, move slower, and keep working anyway, because wages are famously unconcerned with respiratory preferences. The soaked cloth weighs more every hour, forcing your arms and back to negotiate terms they were never built for. Infections spread easily here, but treatment is rare, because replacing workers costs less than protecting them properly. Pain becomes background noise, mixing with splashes, creaks, and steam, until suffering feels less dramatic and more administrative. That numb acceptance looks like toughness from a distance, but up close it is just adaptation to something deeply wrong. And that is the real danger, not the filth itself, but how quickly horror starts passing for ordinary routine. Once your mind labels this normal, leaving becomes harder, because misery with wages still outranks starvation with principles. Some workers limp, some cough blood, some simply vanish, and nobody wastes time pretending that pattern means nothing. The vats keep steaming, the cloth keeps coming, and your body keeps paying interest on debts it never signed. By nightfall, exhaustion has stripped away disgust entirely, leaving only movement, noise, and the terrifying efficiency of despair. You are no longer reacting emotionally, which sounds strong, until you realize emotional death is not actually a promotion. Despite everything, your work matters, because clean fabric does not emerge magically from goodwill, prayer, or wealthy people's expectations. Rich citizens wear soft, finished cloth proudly, never wondering whose skin dissolved slightly to make their sleeves feel luxurious. Markets display perfect wool under bright light, carefully separated from the foul chemistry and broken bodies behind that perfection. You remain invisible in the system, absolutely essential, permanently uncelebrated, and somehow still blamed for smelling like your job. The city depends on you completely, but it prefers pretending cleanliness appears naturally, without labor, poverty, or damaged feet. Without fullers, cloth stays rough, dirty, heavy, and useless, which would be inconvenient for people committed to comfort. With fullers, the cost does not disappear. It simply gets transferred downward into your lungs, feet, skin, and future. So while everyone else enjoys softness, you carry the hidden price like a walking receipt nobody wants to read. You pass through the city unnoticed, performing one of civilization's ugliest miracles and receiving almost no gratitude in return. The clean world exists because someone else stands in filth long enough to make that cleanliness possible for everybody else. And somehow this still is not history's worst job. So wait for the next one if you enjoy professionally structured misery. That someone standing in the filth, inhaling the fumes, and sacrificing his body for soft cloth is you. Your profession will never be admired, only required, which might be the coldest summary of civilization ever written. Tomorrow the barrels will still be full, the vats will still be waiting, and history will still call this normal.